Hello, and welcome to another episode of the Into the 99 podcast, where we've got 99 cards because Commander is number one. I am your hostess with the mostest, Necro Zach, and joined with me is Ryan, Brian, and Benson. Three of the
Hello.
other people at the podcast and/or Discord and/or groupthink and/or hive mind that is the Into the 99.
Gang.
You guys want to say hi?
Hello.
Gang, gang.
What's going on, everybody?
If we were a pirate crew, Brian, I'm not sure what you would be.
Even though I was at Sea Cadets, so I know all this naval stuff.
I'd be the shop.
Oh, so you would be the buoy.
I knew I
Sure.
liked the cut of your jib for a reason there, Brian. I didn't know it was
The cut of your jib. Jiminy Christmas. So today's episode's an episode we've been wanting to discuss for a while now, but with all the sets and supplemental sets that have came out recently, it's been fairly complicated to try to find a way to fit this episode in our lineup. So today we're going to be talking about upgrading and downgrading our decks and what exactly that means. For us, we're specifically going to be talking about power levels and cards in general. So is this, replacing card A with card B because it might be a quote unquote straight upgrade, or just replacing card A with card B because they're similar, but one does something different the other does. So that's just kind of what we're going to be talking about. I'm going to kind of kick things off with how I do it, and then we're just going to have kind of a free-form discussion about, how this works. Hopefully we'll stay on track with the four of us being here and us having no real moderator. I guarantee we're not going to stay on track, so buckle up. Like, just get ready.
Pineapple?
Yeah.
Those are delicious.
Get yourself a hot or a cold beverage and sit down.
I
We're-
like them on my pizza.
Same
Get
here.
triggered.
Literally already off the rails.
Yeah.
So for today's episode, we're going to institute a new rule. If we go too far off track for too long, one of us has to yell whiskey, and that'll
No,
be our cue to
we'll stay
go
on
back.
track. We'll stay on track. So Zach, how do you get into this?
All right, so I'm a simple
Whiskey,
man.
whiskey,
I like simple-
whiskey.
All right, I'm a simple man. I like simple things. Black's my favorite color in Magic. So I always, whenever a new set comes out, whenever a new supplemental set, even any product, the first thing I do is I look at the black cards. Most of my decks are some version of black, so I'm constantly looking what cards can be upgraded from the cards that are black first. So I'll go through the entire set and just kind of verify, like, oh, this is a better, Doomblade. Switching out, going through my decks and figuring out what has Doomblades and what comes out. I remember when Go for the Throat came out, and like I just opened tons of boxes, so all my Doomblades now became Go for the Throats, and it's kind of stayed that way for me.
I do that too. I go through, and it's those little it's the commons and uncommons I usually pull out, but it's the utility cards. So like the Go for the Throat, or back when I started Smother, that was such a fantastic removal card. And when I got back into this, those are the cards that I went for first. I went for the Smothers and the removal that I remembered. But yeah, so then when I build that deck, it's, oh, this card came out and it's so much better.
Right.
Yeah, I had a 7-year gap from Theros to Theros, and when I got back, I was like, wait, what? That exists? I'm like, how is that? Why would I play anything other than that?
I always have to look for the second best black removal because nothing's going to beat Snuff Out.
I don't even know that card.
Snuff Out's
That's
awesome.
great. It's another one of those you can.
It's Mercadian
Not
Master
pay
Actually,
the
Spell.
upgrade your deck with that one. Sorry, if we're getting into that. If you don't have Snuff Out and you're running a swamp, you need Stuff Out.
Yeah, it's another one of those that you don't have to pay the actual mana cost to be able to kill a creature. Is it still target non-black, or is it whatever creature?
I think it's target non-black, but I'll tell you in half a second.
But you just pay 4 life, and if you control a swamp, you can crush it out there.
It is 3 colorless and a black instant. If you control a swamp, you may pay 4 life rather than pay Snuff Out's mana cost. Destroy target non-black creature. It cannot be regenerated.
And it's only been reprinted 3 times?
in a dual deck, I think.
Mercadian Masks is when it originally got
You'll need to
printed.
snuff out. If you don't know what that card is until just a second with your eardrums, with your brain canals, you need to snuff out.
With
Okay,
your
continue.
brain canals.
You should get a Mercadian Mask version because the old border is better.
I would agree with that for that card. But
yeah, sorry, whiskey. Let's keep going.
But that's how I like to start off. Whenever a new set comes out, I have a ton of commander decks just like the rest of you guys, but I always focus first on my Abzan decks, which means I'm looking at black before I look at any other color, and I just kind of go from there. If a set has like a new mechanic, I'll also do something like that. Like we see with Kaldheim, we're seeing Foretell, which seems like it's going to be a really interesting mechanic. So I've also been kind of like, all right, what are our commanders that are going to care about Foretell? What cards do we have that have the Foretell mechanic? So I think with new sets and with how they're getting printed more frequently, the big thing to do when upgrading your deck, in my opinion, is to try to tunnel vision as much as possible and just take your time as you're going through. With a lot of us being in lockdown as often, I know brewing has been like at the forefront of everyone's mind. I mean, we brew a new deck, at least one new deck every week, and it's easier to brew those one decks because we're constantly only looking at that one thing. So
you guys amaze me. I can't do that.
oh well.
My wallet would not financially recover.
Well, there's a difference.
Sorry, when it comes to that, Zach, I'm more tangible. Like I can look at a screen and go like, oh, that might work. But what I'll do with a card I like is I'll take a card that's kind of like it that I'm like, oh, should I switch this out? And I put the new card in my grip of 7, and then I take that card out and I put the old card in my group of 7. And I kind of just think, what would I want more? If I were to have that opening hand, or if I were to draw into that card, what would I be like? Oh yeah, I needed this.
I did something very similar with a card that came out recently. You guys know my love for Village Rites. A card that I ran in its stead for a very long time was it's 1 in a black. You can sacrifice an artifact or a creature, and if you do, you draw 2 cards. It has Vraska on the art. I cannot think of the name.
I don't remember it. So
no, but yeah, Village Rites is amazing.
But it's getting another reprint, right?
Yeah, with new art, with Kaldheim art, which is the art. If you guys haven't seen it, yeah, if you guys haven't seen it, it's
much
very
better
good.
art.
It's metal.
I don't know that it's much better art because I have decks that specifically care about Innistrad art, and that's definitely what Village Rites is. It's definitely Innistrad art, but that's that's just something that I have found. It's like we have a lot of the cards that I think we really see grow is the common and uncommon section.
Yep.
So taking your time to go through these cards and your decks, like what are you going to want more, Village Rites, or are you going to want a Doomblade over a Snuff Out, that kind of stuff, because that also is going to determine power level. Like in regard, like Go for the Throat is probably going to be able to hit more than Snuff Out, but Snuff Out is a arguably more powerful card because you can do it for free.
Mm-hmm.
So that's another thing when upgrading versus downgrading your deck. You also have to really take into consideration where the power level of the card actually lays.
The speed of it.
Something. Yeah, exactly. Playing something for free versus paying something for 2 mana and maybe hitting more creatures. Black
and then
typically.
You can step up even from there and go to Deadly Rollick.
Yeah, exactly.
Which exiles it, and it's free as long as you control your commander.
Or you run all 3.
And that's another thing about upgrading decks. Like maybe you're just running creatures as your removal, and that's just not doing enough. So now you have to substitute out your Flashbag Marauder for a Deadly Rollick. And
this sounds like more work, but Village Rites is a common, so even if a new set comes out, you got to check that like head to toe. Well, we just did our episode of 20, for 2020, talking about our favorite cards of the set, and out of Zendikar Rising, Zendikar Rising, God, that's what it was, right?
Zendikar Rising.
Okay, there was a couple, whatever. My favorite card from the set was an uncommon. It was Feed the Swarm.
Yep.
Feed the Swarm's so good in mono black.
Yeah. If you're not playing white or green, you're one Feed the Swarm.
And see, like, so for me, like, when I'm going through, and I guess when I think of upgrading, I think the speed of my deck, and that's particularly like where I actually look at. So is my CMC, how fast am I able to play stuff? But I usually build variants of my deck or versions. So I build my initial, I go through it, I play it a few times, I see what cards end up sitting in my hand and what cards don't. And do any of these cards have either a better version that is an instant over a sorcery, or is it a creature that I'm trying to get an ETB that I can substitute for a faster spell? Like, my decks are very creature heavy. I always run a lot of creatures, and usually my win cons are trying to deal damage to my opponents. And I end up trying to get rid of a lot of those for spells. Like
you play some very, I would say, very strong mid power like battle cruiser type decks. That's what I think I like about your brewing a lot. Is like we brew similarly in the regard that we both care about creatures, but I think how we how we utilize our creatures is very different. Where I'm wanting to sacrifice them and reanimate them constantly, you're wanting to like link them.
I want to keep my creatures.
Yeah, like you're wanting to constantly protect them, and I'm just kind of like, they die, they die. That's fine with me. I'll get some kind of payout for it. And I think that's what's kind of fun about looking at new sets and upgrading decks is like honing your play style through your deck building, because almost every color can do a similar archetype. It's just a matter of how many hoops you're willing to jump through and make that happen. So what do you guys look for when you're upgrading, Benson and Brian?
I tend, like, when I start looking at a set, the first thing I actually do is look for just unique things, stuff that I'm just like, holy crap, I need to build around that, or that has a home. But I'm also trying, like, kind of what you were saying, like, is there a better 2-mana ramp spell versus a 3-mana ramp spell? Is there a better 2-mana rock versus a 3-mana rock? Is there a creature like they were saying Battlecruiser? I love Battlecruiser Magic, but I want to get them into play as fast as possible. I want to play Craterhoof Behemoths on turn 5 instead of turn 8. So I'm always trying to look for ways to get my stuff into play faster.
Or an Elish Norn on turn 4.
That was so dumb.
So I tend to look, like you said, I try to look, like Brian said, I try to look for instant speed stuff as opposed to sorcery speed, more efficient card draw. So like using things like Rhystic Study and Mystic Remora and Factor Fiction versus much slower card draw. Fast mana using like Dockside Extortionist, Smothering Tithe, Soul Ring,
I have yet to use a Dockside Extortionist or a Hellbreacher or an Op Agent. I am very excited to actually do it, but I have not yet.
So I tend to, and then I also, as I'm playing my decks, I might see a card, like, because Kaldheim will be fresh on the brain, I might see a card in my deck, I'm like, there's a much, much better version or something that does something similar in the new set than a card in a deck that I'm using. So then I try to acquire it, make the change, and then sometimes it works out, and sometimes I'm just like, okay, that card wasn't as good as I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, I think we all have those.
I very seldom actually change cards from new sets. I'll be honest.
I do all the time. Like I will probably, Kaldheim's probably going to cost me like $800 because I'm going to probably buy a ton of cards. Like I got to buy all the modal lands for all the color decks that I have.
It's the lands. The lands are always what get you.
I think, as I don't know about everyone else, but I think this is the first time where the like lower rarity lands I'm more excited about. Like, even though those no lands come into play tapped, I'm more excited to play those. I've not been as huge of a fan of the modal lands as other people. I do run them in some decks, but ultimately this is like a good example, and we'll get to Benson, we'll get to you in just a second, but I want to kind of touch on this before we go into your thing, is that it's, even though it's a speed thing for sure, and it does lower the consistency of your deck, but that's important to keep in mind when judging the power level, judging your meta, is that Ryan typically builds at a more higher power level, and where I don't really mind to dirtle. If I know that like there's a card I just really want to play. Like I love the snowlands. Like I love the snow stuff in general. Um, I'll play those over cards that I know are better, just because me as a player, I'm going to be more excited to get to play that snowland because it's cool and it's unique for what it does, versus like, man, I'm so much further behind, but I'm happier looking at my board state, if that makes sense.
Yeah, I find with all my decks, I shouldn't say all, most of my decks, consistency is key for me. Like I want to be, and I don't mean like I want to draw Creator of Behemoth every time on the same turn, but I want to do the things that I want to do. I want the most consistent, streamlined option. Sometimes, your average CMC of the deck may take a hit, but I don't. My decks have a mission, and I want to always achieve that mission.
Right. So Benson, what do you look for when you're upgrading decks and upgrading, switching out cards for quote unquote better cards?
With me, better cards, it applies to the meta. Like, of course, there's like better cards in general that come out with each set because of power creep.
Right.
But I adjust, like, I've been playing with you guys a lot, and I've adjusted my decks to adapt to your play style. So my upgrades are based on how you guys play. When you abandon me and like unfriend me and whatnot, and I have to find a new group, then my upgrades will change based off that. So yeah, right now it's just meta based.
Did anybody tell Benson the letters in the mail already?
It's not a pink slip if you're colorblind.
That's a good. So yeah, that's something like Benson. It's a good way to segue kind of back into another topic that I want to talk about.
Oh, sorry, I will cut you off. The one time, the biggest upgrade I think I ever made in a deck was I was playing. I was a little mana screwed, and I drew a card, and I said, "I wish this was a land." So after that game,
he swapped that card out.
Swapped it out for a basic land.
Yeah, that's
and
do I know if my deck ran better the next time? Not really, but it was just
that's something else. That's something else. Like it's still going to follow the topic that I really want to get into next, and it's talking about our meta. So upgrading and downgrading your deck is very heavily reliant upon the meta that you play in. So you can build a very consistent deck literally at any power level of the spectrum, but your power level is almost always going to be dictated by your meta. I don't know how you guys feel about that, but that's kind of how I always take it. Like we've had so many discussions and so many conversations over the last couple of years as a community talking about power level, what power level is, what, where your deck sets in the power level. I don't know if you guys are on the same page as me about that, but I think your meta is really going to determine how you consider your power level of a deck. I know the meta that we have now, which is me playing with you guys and Han and Lotus and the Elder Dragon Skyplander guys. My meta, I used to be like quote unquote top dog is me or my cousin Matt. One of us would always win, and I was cool with that for a while. I felt, but after a while, it became like, man, I feel kind of like, like a pool shark in a way. It wasn't as much fun. So I scaled back and I started building decks that were more thematic, or, like I said, no matter if I was winning or losing, if I could look down and my board state made me happy, whether it just be because I was running all matching basics or I was doing something silly, that's kind of what I started brewing. Like, so that's something else that is important with upgrading, downgrading is your meta.
I think the one thing that you've also changed. So we've been, say, about half a year and a half, or about almost the full year. Zach has consistently decreased the amount of lands that he has run in his deck, because I think that's the one huge change that I've seen in upgrading your decks to and speeding them up and having that proper land base. Like as you go forward, as like, because like you come in and be like, guys, I'm down from 38 to 36 lands.
What's 36 lands? 34, but I won't get into that.
But no, this is a good point. This is something that still follows along with the topic of upgrading, downgrading. when I got back into playing Commander, because I took a very long hiatus as well, I stopped right around the Theros block, and before then, my decks were garbage.
Apparently, Theros did us all wrong
Right.
because we all stopped playing there.
I had a kid.
That'll do it too. I wish I still had my old collection, but I had a lot of cool cards, but my decks were absolutely atrocious. They were terrible. And getting back into Commander, I got back in right at the end of like the Amonkhet block. And man, that was just like what I just want to play Commander. I literally don't want to play anything else. So I started, Command Zone and Commander Clash and a bunch of these other channels, and I just was like doing what they were saying, which is fine. I'm not throwing shade at any of those guys because they are good templates for starting out.
Yep.
Somewhere between 38 and 40 lands is fine. 10 draw, 10 ramp, 5-6 mass removal, or 5-6 removal, including targeted and mass. That kind of stuff is awesome, and I thought that's what you had to do. But as I've played with you guys and our meta has become more defined. I've definitely learned like it's okay to go lower in my land base because you guys have taught me about average CMC. And granted, I've played for a while and I think I can brew good decks, but there are just things that you don't really understand, I think, as a Magic player until you really
the math of the game.
Well, I don't think you really understand it until you really, work with other people and really have your constant meta where you're, all we do is talk about brewing. All we do is talk about cards. And I've learned a lot. And that's once again, like upgrading and downgrading your deck is important, but keeping the health of your meta and your play group is also important. And these guys have helped our meta become healthier because now I'm building decks that actually work more efficiently.
Because like till Dan and them showed me like I knew of tapped out.
Yeah, tapped out.
Yeah, so I knew of that one, but until I was shown like Architect and
our Lord and Savior's Architect.
Yeah.
I love.
We should really actually back them on Patreon. Like they're on there. But until I started using it and uploading my decks to their website, and like, because Dan's always like, "Why are you running?" Like he did the same thing when I started podcasting and started helping it with their social medias and everything. That he's like, "Why are you running this card? Like your average CMC is high." And I'm just saying, like, how can you even know what my average is from going through it? But then once I like put it up to the website, I'm like, oh, like my average CMC is like 6.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
No, you're fine. I've talked for a while.
No, go ahead, because I got to retrain my brain. I forgot already.
Okay. Something
old age is catching up to
another
me.
way to upgrade your deck is if your commander says partner at the bottom of it, should probably give it a partner.
A resource that I don't want to say heavily used. So let me backtrack real quick, and then I'll go to where I was going to say is when I used to play the meta that I played in, I was public enemy number 1 every single game.
I wonder why.
Almost every game it was 3v1. So I was defending off 3 players right from the rip. So my decks just continually increased in power level because I had to defend. I had to try to kill 3 people at the same time.
You had to defend your honor.
Yes. So that's a lot why my power level increased. Like it just kept exponent because I would increase and then they would increase and then I would increase and then they would increase.
It was an arms race.
Yeah.
It was an arms race. And I always had to be ahead of them. And going back with brewing and upgrading, downgrading, another resource that I find invaluable is EDH Rec. I am on EDH Rec all the time. Anytime I even get an idea, I'm like, okay, I want to build this deck. So my first stop is EDH Rec just to kind of get an idea of what I can do with the deck. And then I just start devouring other ideas to flush out my deck.
So my favorite thing about EDH Rec, because I do believe it is the best tool at our disposal for brewing, is they do the salt calculator. And I really like that because
I've never even seen that.
Yeah, so if you go and look in the bottom right hand corner of certain cards, you'll see a little salt shaker, and it tells you the percentage of so like this. Cyclonic Rip. Just look up Cyclonic Rip and you'll see it in the bottom left hand corner. But what I like about that is Dan and I had a conversation about this a couple of days ago where we were talking about Hullbreacher and Opposition Agent, which are arguably two of the most
super salty cards.
Well, not even just that; they're just
that's awesome.
Yeah,
Sorry,
absolutely love it. They're the most, I think, polarizing cards in the format at present because they are a lot of feel bads depending on what table you're playing them at. That's where we talked about Rule 0, and we talked about this goes into your meta. But what I like is what I like and dislike. So if you are a newer player and you go on EDH, right, you get an idea for a card, and you see that Hull Breacher blue, so it's it's suggested that people are playing this in the deck that you're wanting to build. Just because it's on there doesn't necessarily mean it should go in your deck, and that comes down once again to upgrading, downgrading, and keeping your meta and your play group healthy. Now, yeah, if we're all sitting down and we're planning on playing very high power level decks, not necessarily CEDH, but just like we're playing maybe 8s and 9s where it's borderline, it's super consistent. We're playing fast mana, our average CMC is low, and we all know like yeah, we want to play a couple games pretty quickly, and we really want to like push the budget, push the budget and push the power level of these decks. Yeah, Hull Breacher 100% goes in decks like that. But when we're sitting down and yeah, Ryan,
those are actually win with mine. Okay, I wanted you guys hellbent. I put that down to a Teferi's puzzle box. I was gonna just win the game right there. Okay, so that's where I justify it. If you're gonna win the game with the card, go for it. Like Cyclonic Rift. If you're gonna win with Cyclonic Rift, sure. If you're just doing it to do it and you don't have a winning plan, or like you're not going to do it a turn later, then please don't.
When we played that game, though, we had the understanding we were going to be playing more powerful decks. Like I've said it a billion times, my Salamander deck is a toddler with a rocket launcher. It's a very silly idea, but I am playing high power level cards in there. Mm-hmm. So I expect there to be shenanigans. I expect to get Op Agent. I expect to get, Hull Breacher, unless otherwise stated.
I think that cards, like even with power level, I think cards like Opposition Agent and Hull Breacher, and after having played it a bunch, I think they really need to be part of the strategy of the deck. I think they're warranted if that's what your deck is trying to do. But I think sometimes like you're playing like an innocent blue-green creature deck, you're trying to just attack and gain advantage, and then somebody's like, cool, we're going to draw a bunch of cards, and you're like, nope, here comes the Hull Breacher.
You guys. You mean like you did to my silly rabbit?
What? I would never do such a thing.
But now it's funny. At the time, I was furious.
Oh, you were salty.
I was because I just wanted people to draw cards and have fun. But that's fine though, because like even games like that where like I don't know if let's be honest, like I was playing a group hug deck. It's definitely lower on the scale, and I knew that going in, but I just wanted to have fun. I wanted to see what you guys could do. If I won, cool. If I didn't, whatever. As long as you guys drew a billion cards, I had no cares. But looking back now, like even still, like that's still a fun like memory to talk about. Like that Ryan just doing Ryan stuff. I was mad at the time, and now I'm just kind of like, whatever.
So for I think let's do a little recap. Go over how each of us upgrade our decks, but we should start talking about how we alleviate the arms race and how we de-escalate our decks. So personally, for me to upgrade my decks, I prefer the play testing style, and then figuring out if there is a card that is a dead card in hand that I cannot do anything with, and then I start replacing those cards. Or if I'm going for a more competitive deck, I'm usually strictly looking at the CMC and replacing the higher costing cards with something that either is faster or is a more, what's the word I'm looking for?
Consistent?
Yeah,
efficient?
More consistent or efficient card to replace
Cultivate out 3 visits in. As soon as that becomes more accessible.
Yes. Yep. You know what? I never knew about that card until you guys started talking about it, because it didn't pop up on any of the things that I saw. So as soon as I saw someone play it, I was like, okay. I went through all of my boxes of Commander Legends. I pulled them all out. I have them in my all 3.
One per box.
I put them into my staples box, and now as I'm brewing, it's that box I go to grab out cards that I'll use.
I just want to interrupt you real quick before Ryan starts on his thing. The reason why you didn't see 3 visits is because it was in a very small run print set, and it was like $100, almost $200, and it shouldn't have been that expensive.
Yeah.
All right. Sorry, that made me mad. I love that card.
I do not have a large collection. When I got out, I sold off everything, so I've been slowly picking up cards. So the way I tend to brew and upgrade and downgrade is I build a deck, and then I send that deck list out to all my friends that play, and I'm like, "Hey, what do you guys think of this?" And then people are like, "It's way too abusive," or "It sucks," and you need to do this. And then they throw ideas at me, and then I scour EDH rec. I'll start YouTubing gameplay videos of people playing the same commander pairings, and then I'll watch those gameplay and then look at their deck lists. And I'm like, I forgot about that card. I didn't know that card existed. That is a way better version of this. And then once I have something that I'm happy with, then I will start trading and picking up the cards for the deck. And then, like Brian said, then I start playing it, and you may find, hey, this didn't work, or even then, like my Arkelos deck, I was really happy with the finished product, and then Dan was like, you should run Field of the Dead, Scape Shift, and Reshape the Earth. And I was like, that didn't even cross my path as an idea. So then I make some changes and upgrade and downgrade until I get to a point where I'm happy with the deck and the deck can compete.
I'm super excited to brew my version of Arkelos that I built out of your version of Arkelos, especially now with all those
Snow turtle.
Ice turtle. Yes, I'm so excited, especially with Kaldheim actually bringing so many snow permanents into the game. But that's a deck for a different time. Benson, what about you? Let's recap your brewing or upgrading.
Like meta based. Another thing that I forgot to touch on is I love brewing new decks. I send lists to Zach all the time.
It's one of my favorite things about you.
If you brew a new deck, that deck is technically upgraded because you have all the access to all the cards that are available at that moment, right? Yeah. So before, like when a new set comes out, make sure you're upgrading your old decks first and then getting into it, because you can have your favorite deck and it's probably going to be the most recent one you built, and it's because you haven't bothered to upgrade the other two. But yeah, as soon as I started playing with you guys, my decks are built to kind of deal with Brian's snakes. And
snakes on a plane, baby.
Yeah. They're a fun time.
Yeah, like I was going into Brian was the one that dropped that Teferi's puzzle box, and I dropped the Hull Breacher, planning to win with it, not just to.
Do you know what? And you were trying to be so nice that game. You're like, yeah, I'll just let you draw your cards. I'll let you do this, and then we're all gonna have some fun. Teferi's puzzle box, Hull Breacher.
Which brings me like build your decks, upgrade your decks for the meta, because that's exactly what happened. I taunted Brian until he played a wheel, and then I got him with my upgrade.
I don't think you taunted him as much as you just kept asking him to do one because it would be super helpful for the group. I think you just lied is what you did.
You straight politic Brian into doing it, and then you're just like, ha ha ha.
I went into that game just wanting to have fun. Like I'm going to draw a bunch of cards. I want to see how many snakes I can make. I'm not going to try to win.
I think we both did, because I was like, man, I just really want to win with my Salamanders deck. It's come so close so many times. I just want one win.
I'm 0-6 with Togo, but I'm determined.
Togo, yeah, I think it's just a good representation of how powerful a deck can be, honestly. But I had to step away for a second. Benson, did you recap your upgrade strategies?
I did. And
so
you'll only know what I was talking about if you were actually listening to me before we recapped. So I'm just.
Oh, we didn't. So I'm going to carry on as I please, and if I say anything you said, I don't care. It's new.
His upgrade style is basically that salt guy, but he's just like Hull Breachering everything.
He actually has a thing of Morton's table salt with Hull Breacher taped onto it.
And also, it depends on what you crack open in packs. Like my 2 recent mana drains that I'll probably have to go into a pack.
Your luck is ridiculous.
5 packs, 2 mana drains. So those are going in decks.
So what I like doing for upgrades is one of my favorite things to do is to scour either Gatherer or Scryfall for specific things. I have found it. I always build it with some kind of theme, whether it be a specific tribe or a specific mechanic. Like right now, I'm really on my Vanifar pod deck. I love birthing pods. So what I have found is when I'm brewing anything that's going to really push that theme even harder is typically what makes my deck stronger. The more creatures that I can play that untap Vanifar, the more stuff that I can do to give my creatures flash so they can come in and use their activated abilities. Typically, that is going to upgrade your deck, right? You have your generalized theme. You know, if you do this theme consistently every single turn, or I don't know, 8 times in a single turn, you're probably going to win the game. Your deck is probably going to be powerful, and it's going to be consistent. That's what really breeds these higher power level decks. It's not so much, and Dan talks about it a lot. The C in CEDH doesn't stand for competitive; it stands for consistent, and that's the thing. You know, when we're playing a singleton format, the things that the redundancies and the fast mana and stuff like that. That's really what makes your deck more powerful because it's so consistent. But so that's the one side of the coin with upgrading. So that same school of thought can honestly be used for downgrading your deck. If your deck is super consistent and your whole theme is getting your commander out and playing Thrasios to draw your entire deck, the quicker you do that and the quicker you have access to that mana to be able to do so is going to make your deck more powerful. So you can do the same thing and start to take stuff out instead of playing your 2-drop mana rock that taps for something as soon as it comes in. Maybe playing your 3-drop Darksteel Ignite that is indestructible but taps for any color is going to be makes your deck a little less consistent, but it doesn't necessarily hurt your deck. I'm by no means telling anyone to build a bad deck for the sake of your meta, because that's not fun.
Another fantastic way to downgrade your deck and take the consistency is just remove tutors.
Yeah.
It radically changes the way your deck operates.
Yeah.
And I don't know if you guys, I don't play a lot of tutors. The tutors that I play are typically in my more higher level decks, Most of the time I'm packing it full of draw and hoping I get what I'm looking for.
Yeah.
And that's the thing. We definitely don't advocate for building quote unquote bad decks, because we want people to play. We want people to have fun. We've had a couple games where Brian, you've seen this, where someone has just drawn and they've mulliganed down to 5, and we're just like, no, draw a hand to 7, get a hand you can play.
Yeah, that's all we want, is just to be able to have fun playing the silly game that we absolutely love. And sometimes
standard.
Yeah, because I've built when I first started playing Commander, I wanted to play a more competitive deck because there was an arms race currently going on at our LGS, and I built Kira the Great Glass Spinner. You have to target my stuff twice if you want to remove it. But then I built into that deck the ability to steal your stuff. You want to get your stuff back, or you want to stop me from stealing your stuff, you have to be able to target my stuff twice. A lot of decks don't run that much removal or that much targeted removal to prevent it. So, a lot of people were getting very salty at me. A lot of people kept constantly not wanting to, if I had that commander in my command zone, they would be like, can you switch your deck? And me being, and it got to the point where the complaining wasn't fun to me. So I ended up tearing it apart because that one was just too strong. There was no other way that I wanted to build it. And so, but the nice thing was I put a lot of my nice blue cards that I collected into a different deck. I think a lot of them went into my Chulane deck. So it's just being able to find a deck that can be more, or another deck that you can put your cards into. But I always try to have at least a couple decks that are at different tiers or different power levels, so I can match the board and things along those lines. So I build them in where I want them to be. If that makes sense.
That's definitely something I've learned too from, like I said, in my old play group, I was definitely more at the of the top of the heap, and I like that. I was like, oh, I just want to keep pushing the boundaries of what I can do and what I can brew. I was getting new cards that at the time I would have never imagined being able to get. I'm sure all of us have that where we started playing. I was pretty young, and I know the rest of you guys were probably pretty young when you started playing Magic, and I couldn't afford a lot of the cards that like I can now. Man, like back in the day, Baneslayer Angel was like so expensive, and I was
Like
just
a
so
$50 card.
I only had access to my.
I bought Lion's Eye Diamond for $50, and then I traded it in whenever.
Exactly. You look at cards like that where it's just like, man, I always wanted to play with that card, but I never had access to it. But now that I'm an adult and I have a consistent pay, like I can do that. And that's kind of what ended up hurting me. It was like I was building decks that were very good, but they weren't necessarily matching up to my meta. But I was just so enthralled with building these decks that I didn't really care. And that's when it leads to these arms race and when it leads to these pub stomps and eventually just it honestly hurts your meta. Like you need 3 other people at least to play Commander, in my opinion, to play a good game of Commander. And if you're constantly being a jerk and you're constantly building these decks that are out of touch with your meta, you're not gonna have a meta. It's just as simple as that. Or it's going to get to the point every game someone's trying to combo off, and there's a place and time for that. If everyone's in the same boat, everyone knows what to expect. Those games are a blast.
Yeah,
like I've been completely blown out, but I've known what I was getting into going in, and it was just fun. It was just like, okay, I lost, but like I almost got you guys. Like, let's see how the rest of the table does.
Like I with one of my I had a couple of combos in one of my decks, and I just kept in the combos that die to removal because like I found out that you guys don't run the spells that would stop my other combos. And like to have a fair, fun game, I didn't want to win off with that combo anymore. And that combo I'm talking about is Dramatic Scepter. So I kept Dockside and Tamir Sabretooth in dice to removal, but I took out Dramatic Scepter because I didn't want you guys to have to change your decks drastically to deal with mine. Because I remember it was 2 games of it, and Brian, like, I had a tutor. I think I had Gamble. and Brian both games rolled his eyes.
Now I knew what you were going for.
Yeah, right. And that's the other thing. Like, I don't want to make it so obvious. By the way, though, it was fair both times that I gambled. I did lose the card I gambled for. So
the Urza.
Yeah, the Urza. So because that was part of the combo technically with Togo Rocks. But yeah, so I took out Dramatic Scepter. I saw Brian's eye roll, and then I playing their decks, or I moderate the stream. I didn't see that they ran too much of that kind of removal, so I took it out. I want to have fun games.
Most of my counter spells, I'll be honest, are my higher tier decks. I like if I play a blue deck in like a more casual game, I typically don't have counters. I have other removal, but I don't typically run counter magic.
Well, that's something I was talking about too before we really started recording, because Benson was talking about the 12 mana drains that he's opened subsequently.
You mean the 24? He's opened 12 packs since then.
Oh, okay. 20 for the viewers at home, 24. Something I like doing is instead of running mana drains, which I have access to as well, I'll run negates. Granted, I like running negate more than mana drain, like I've said, because the double blue sometimes whatever. But in a lot of play groups, a lot of play groups will consistently play more creature spells, and their bigger win stuff is going to be like silly instants or sorcery. So negate would be better, but in that same vein, it only hits non-creature spells. So switching out a mana drain for a negate can also help to pull back on the power level of your deck while still doing something your deck is wanting to do. You're still wanting to counter a spell. It's just more, God, I can't think of what the word. It just has more restrictions.
Yeah.
Same thing. Do we play Smother or do we play Go for the Throat? Do we play Doomblade or do we play Go for the Throat? More restrictions are going to breed a less powerful quote unquote deck, but still it's going to do what you want to do. And it all comes back to just matching your meta. If you're noticing that you can't keep up with your meta, talking to them about like, hey, can we try redefining what our power levels are, or maybe like, can you guys help me? Just anything like that, because
If your friend Brian is running a 5-color Golos deck, you just, you know what, you go to your LGS and you buy a Blood Moon, and then guess what? The table's even.
or you steal Golos and you cast Rite of Replication with Kicker on it.
Or you opposition agent when he goes to search for 3 aura spells.
You guys are all so mean to me. All 3 of you abused my Golos deck.
and right there, we've all adjusted to the meta, is what I was kind of getting
exactly. But, you know, that's the thing. We just, as Commander players, we can still have a good time. I'm not telling you by any means, I'm not advocating for anyone to tear apart a deck because it's powerful, because those decks have a place. But if you want to play that deck more often, you're going to have to be able to adjust to the meta, and that's going to mean, you know, downgrading your deck to certain degrees. If you're playing like a card that I absolutely love, but I don't build because I don't know how to build it fairly, is Marin of the Clan Neltoth. There is no way me as a player, like with my love of reanimation, I cannot build that deck as low power. There's no way.
I would still love to see it though.
I had it built and took it apart because it was too much.
Believe me, everything in me wants to build that deck, but I won't because I want to be able to play it all the time. And to do that, I think the only fair way is to have like a mid-tier version of the deck, and I just can't do it. I couldn't.
I do find
another way. Oh, sorry, you go ahead, Ryan.
It kind of goes along with downgrading, and it kind of doesn't. But I find too sometimes if the deck is too strong and you just keep winning and winning and winning, take the deck apart. Use the components. Like I took 3 decks apart recently and used the components to build 2 or 3 more different decks, because the decks just become either unfun to play or unfun to play against. And then you can build new experiences and learn from what you did and try to make the deck a bit more balanced. Or if you need to, you just make something nastier. If your group's going up, you take 2 decks and make it into 1 deck.
Or you just own the salt.
Where's Arkelos at? Yeah. The king of salt.
And then another thing I wanted to talk about was you could have the same deck, but if your commander is different, like, you know, you kind of have the same theme, but your commander's different. And I think before the episode started, I was talking about Muldrotha. And Muldrotha is like super powerful, of course, right? But I was talking about switching that out for Mimeoplasm. First off, way better. Dinosaur for a hand. We'll look up the art if you don't know. But like, it kind of does the same thing. You're going to get something back out of your graveyard. It's just going to be done differently, right? Yep. So that might even slow you down for a turn. Or you might not be comfortable with that new commander. So even though it's the same deck, you have to relearn how to play it with this new one. Or you could run it in the 99 too, and then just swap them out based off of who you're playing against. Like that's
something I like doing a lot. Is I love building a commander deck with an idea of like, this is who my commander is going to be, but I have 2 or 3 different legendary creatures in the deck that could theoretically be the commander of this deck instead. It'll still function, but it might not be as consistent, quote unquote, or as strong.
The precons kind of did it best. You know, they usually have like 3. Now, what's that one that you run, Brian? Like that's better than
Trin Silver?
Yeah, that's way better than
Jurina,
yeah. Of the Kondo or Kudro or whatever.
Kudro, yeah.
Another way you can do it too is
of the Kondo fees.
If there's a strategy that you like to do, like Zach is in love with Reanimator. Benson likes making rocks. Brian likes drawing cards and blinking stuff. Like I recently I want to make a token based deck, and originally I was going to do, I think it was Naya. And I decided that I wanted to use the mana base elsewhere, so it was part of the play, but I'm going to try doing it as Jeskai and doing the token strategy, but then I lose access to green, so it's not going to be as powerful or consistent, but I can still do all the token things that I want to do.
Yeah.
So I mean, it's another option. So like if you love Reanimator, try to play Jund Reanimator, so you don't get access to all the blue ways to put stuff in your graveyard. Or if you want to run Blink, don't run white. I don't even know how that would work, but
blue's still pretty good.
Like Benson loves Togo. Why not try like Boros Togo? if you're finding that your Togo decks are too
Oh,
powerful.
don't worry. There's things in the works there, like Togo and Ardennes, where you can equip the rocks for free, and then you there's ideas out there.
Try to do what you want, but a completely different strategy to achieving what you want, and it might make the deck a bit, I don't want to say too toned down, but it might balance it out so you're not going in, building something at an 8 because you have all the optimal options. You might go in at a 5 or a 6 or even a 4 because you don't have the most optimal version possible.
Group hug.
So, yeah.
No.
So I like my group hug deck. So something I wanted to touch on, a couple things, and it'll kind of lead way into a new topic, I think. But the first thing is I think something we need to work on as Commander players, and I think we're doing a much better job in our Discord specifically about this, but having that conversation about our expectations of the game. Like, I think we've gotten better at what's your power level of the deck? And that's still important to know, but I think talking about our expectations, going in, hey, I'm playing this group hug deck. I can win, but it's pretty out there. So this is what I'm playing. And, people not necessarily taking advantage of that, but just having an understanding of okay, he's playing a group hug deck. Let's try to play decks that are going to match that kind of energy,
Yeah, because I was planning to play my Zyrus deck when you did that. You're like, yeah, they'll play group hug. I was like, okay, I'm not going to abuse the power that is being given to me.
and that's just an idea that comes to mind. It doesn't necessarily mean that you always have to do it, but it's just
I guess
keep a game healthy.
I guess that's one thing too, is if you know that a deck that someone is playing that what they're trying to achieve could boost your deck in strength. So say the draw with my Zyrus deck, someone playing a group hug deck that's forcing me to draw cards that I'm then in turn going to force other people to draw cards, just greatly increases the power of my deck.
You're kind of making yourself kingmaker.
Yeah.
Pre-game, right? And that's just not how everybody else wants to play.
Yeah.
One of the things I like to do, and it doesn't entirely change the strength of my deck, but a lot of times I will ask the table, what deck do they want to play against? And a lot of times,
let them pick their poison.
Well, but sometimes, if Zach knows that he's playing his group hug deck, he's not going to want me to play the deck that's going to benefit more from me drawing cards. Or if Brian's running a deck that has 20 pieces of mat, I shouldn't say Brian, Dan. If Dan runs his tribal mass removal deck, and then he lets me pick a deck that I have creatures, a heavy creature based strategy. So it doesn't necessarily change the power level of my deck, but I think it lets them, like you said, pick their poison, but it puts them in a position where they're going to pick a deck for me to play that won't capitalize on the strategy that they're trying to use.
I think that also helps with your meta too, right? So the more we play with each other and the more we stream with each other, I think it really we start to kind of have our decks kind of stapled to us, if I play my Salamanders deck, you guys obviously know what to expect. If I play my Taunter deck, you guys know what to expect. And that kind of try to kill the Taunter. But that kind of stuff is what I think leads to a healthy meta, like Brian's saying. If I'm I'm not sure which deck to play from these 3 decks you guys are aware of, it makes it easier to be oh, well, I'm playing this deck, so could you play this deck? Because you know what to expect. When sitting down at a table where you're playing with people that you don't really know, sometimes it's just going to happen that, you're playing a Reanimator deck and someone's playing a Mill deck, and suddenly your deck is just 2 times better because of that,
I have a fast story about that one. The very first game I played when I got back into Commander, I went to one of my FLGSs and I sat down at a table, and I don't even remember what the deck that I was playing was. And it was 2 casual guys, myself, and then a guy sat down with CEDH Urza and had us locked out of the game on turn 3. And all of us were just oh, that was fun. I had 3 land in play. One guy got mana screwed, and somebody else had an Iron Mirror in play, and we were locked out of the game by Urza. So I think it is important, like we were saying, to have multiple decks and the rule 0 conversation, so everybody is aware of what everybody's trying to achieve at the table.
I used to be very much in the belief that my deck I didn't care if my deck made you happy to play against or not because I wanted to win. But as I've played more and as I've gotten more responsible with deck building, I've come to learn that like I am responsible for your guys' enjoyment in the game. Are you necessarily going to like everything that I do? No, but part of that is that conversation and that expectation level, you know, and that
everybody's got the same size deck. It's just how you use it, right?
Right.
Well, so, it's something that's unique in our format. Like we're not, and I don't want to say that EDH tournaments are necessarily a bad thing, but typically we're logging onto a server at random hour of the day with 3 people that we generally like, and we're just trying to kill a couple of hours and let off some steam and have fun playing this game that we all love. I mean, we all have something in common. Now, if you're going to like a Grand Prix and you're playing standard, your goal is to crush your opponent.
Yeah, if there's a prize, I'm going for that prize.
Yes, but if like all we're playing for is pride, then we should all be sitting down at the table just trying to make a positive I don't know, try to have fun for a couple of
positive
hours.
Environment.
A positive play experience.
Yes,
especially with
PPE, guys. You gotta wear your PPE.
Table and whatnot, and like picking up random players. Like if 3 of us picked up a random player, like or someone in our Discord that's never played against our decks, right? We're all going to be kind of tuned to each other's decks, and then we don't know what to expect, and they don't know what to expect. So you kind of have to.
Yeah, we usually ask them what are you playing? I guess. Well, I think we're going off topic with all these questions as to getting into new games, but it's typically what's your power level, how consistent, and then I can kind of make my determination.
This is still important with upgrading and downgrading your deck because knowing your meta and knowing how to and having that conversation is ultimately, well, if I keep saying that my deck is a 5, but I'm consistently running into 7s or 8s where I feel like I can't compete, knowing how to A, figure your meta, B, upgrade your deck is important.
Oh,
all these topics have to go hand in hand. You can't have a conversation about one without the others because it's a large, broad topic with many, many different heads.
Yeah.
And I also think it's important that we do this, and it's important that we have these conversations because we only have each other to play with. If I get to a point where either my decks are underpowered and I'm getting crushed just game in and game out and I have no chance, I'm probably going to get frustrated and either look somewhere else to play or maybe even to the point where I stop playing.
Yep.
And the same thing where if you're just continuously crushing everybody at the table, people are going to get to the point where they're like, well, what is the point in playing? Because so-and-so is going to win every single game and there's no, like, why am I bothering? We'll just go play with somebody else.
And I've been that guy.
I'll just real quick and then I'm done. Yeah. Community is the most important part of this game. Without a community, without a healthy community, this game doesn't exist.
I've been that guy quite a few times where it's just like, why do we even play? Because we're going to lose. And at first, like, it's cool and it's like gratifying, but the more you play, the more you realize like that's just not what I'm about. And it doesn't necessarily mean that like you're a bad person because you get enjoyment from it, but it's a matter of like how healthy do you want your meta to stay?
Mm-hmm.
Like if you're consistently winning, you gotta try to find something to scale back the deck or do something to keep your meta healthy because upgrading and downgrading is vital for your play group regardless. And it doesn't even matter. Like if you're just constantly on your own and you're just goldfishing games, that's one thing. If you're just like always looking for randoms, you still have to have this conversation. It doesn't necessarily mean that your deck has to be tuned to a specific meta, but it's still a conversation you have to have. If you sit down or if you log on and everyone's playing 5s and you're playing an 8, it's going to be pretty noticeable. And it might lead to you not having a good time because you're getting targeted,
Yep.
I think it's most important to barely win instead of destroying everybody.
Yeah, good games are fun.
I like pulling them out when there's like still 3 people that are attempting to win.
The second game on our stream when out of the blue,
Lotus.
Wins. Yeah,
one life and
one wins.
One life and an elk.
Yep.
So
I can't wait.
That's kind of
5 Krakens.
So let's kind of wrap this up. So Zach, point blank or I guess, point form. What are your tips to downgrading your deck, or what do you aim for?
I like to aim for cards that do something similar, but at a higher CMC. Not drastically, but maybe instead of 2, it's 3. And also, no free spells, and no tutors. I think we're all probably in the
I'll
same
never take
boat.
stuff out of a deck for you. It's
I'll snuff you out with snuff. I'm gonna get you a snuff now. I have to go buy 6 of them.
And Benson, for you, what do you try to do?
Like I said, for upgrading, I play it to the meta. For downgrading, switch out the commander. Another thing, like I was kind of messing with saying Blood Moon there, but if if your deck isn't maybe as powerful, or other decks are a little more up there, if you run a back to basics, if you run a Blood Moon, you're kind of
trying to stack your opponent. Is that what you're trying to say here?
When in doubt, stacks them out.
When in doubt, stacks them out. Thank you. No, but if like one of my older decks, I play, my other play group, they had like precons that they just kind of upgraded, right?
Yeah.
So I took out all of my shocks and whatnot. I kept the fetches in, but I did mostly basics. And my mindset is like play like someone else has a Blood Moon. If you're gonna downgrade your deck, right? Just keep a lot of more basics in there, because hey, they could have a Blood Moon. They're running red, right? They could not, right? Or probably not. But if you kind of keep that mindset, then it's
because your deck just slower because you can't get the mana consistently out.
Yeah, like we all have a stack of basics, right? So if you you could take 10 seconds to switch out your shocks. You could. Brian,
Dan doesn't have.
Dan doesn't have. Dan doesn't have basics.
He doesn't have forests specifically.
Well, if you subscribe to our Patreon, there's a $1.50 tier. And you know what? That could help get Dan a stack of basics.
I want to interrupt real quick before we go to Ryan. But one of my favorite things, and you guys need to try it if you haven't, go out and buy a precon and literally put $20 into it at the most, and have the rest of your play group do it. Those are some of the most fun games I have honestly ever had. I've never utilized a deck like that before, and it's so much fun. That's a good way if
I'll do it with Kaldheim. Let's do it. We can have the 4 of us do it with Kaldheim.
Yeah, that actually sounds like a good idea.
It's so much fun.
Set a dollar value, and then we'll invest into the deck and just.
Well, I'll tell you right now, if I get black green elves, I'm switching it out for Miara and Kamal, and that's what's coming at you. That'll be my $20.
So Ryan, what are your tips and tricks in downgrading?
I don't downgrade. No,
I just tear decks apart and build new ones.
I take out, like, I had that Timna the Weaver Vile Smasher combo deck, and I had something like 34 different combos in the deck, but I had no way to draw any cards, and I had no way to search for any of the combo pieces, and I never won a single game with it. I actually took it apart, like the deck. But I would say take the combos out, or sorry, take the take the combos out, take the free spells out, take the tutors out, and even possibly change not change the strategy deck, but change the. Don't use the most optimal version of the strategy. Like I said, I'm building a Jeskai tokens deck. And I'm losing out on like parallel lives, doubling season.
But you do gain a divergent transformation, and I will watch out for that.
I didn't even think about that card going in there.
Yeah, I guess that's like a really good way of doing it.
And Anointed Procession, don't forget Anointed Procession.
Oh, it's already in the deck. But it's still, I have one way to double up on my tokens. And now, don't get me wrong, Enlightened Tutor will be in the deck. Like, I'm definitely going to go hard to try to get the Anointed Procession. But it's better than having that and Parallel Lives and Doubling Season in play.
Yeah.
Unless you're Clever Impersonator, Mirage Mirror.
So, and for me, like I try to build decks to a certain power level. So I try to, if I notice that they're starting to get too high, like of a power level, I guess that's typically where they stay. Or I will again tear them apart and build a new deck, like my cat dog deck. Like I took apart a few decks to actually make that one, because I needed some enchantments and everything from other decks. But the decks that I took apart, probably are not the same power level as this one.
I would agree with that.
So I try to make sure that I have a overarching deck for each area, or I've learned how to dirtle.
Yeah.
Sometimes that's the other thing. Like if you have a deck that's high powered and you're playing with a group of people that are a little under your power level, don't cast the Hull Breacher. Don't cast the Opposition Agent. Don't cast the Rhystic Study. Maybe use a card that discards it and just discard it and get it out of your hand. And don't use these extremely powerful, or like Demonic Tutor, but don't go get like the Win Con. Go get something like a basic land or a creature, and
just
just
exactly what I do when I was playing with Benson.
Don't think of it as pay to play. Like, of course, Magic cards, they cost money, but don't think of the game as pay to play.
Yeah,
that's a good point. I like Demonic Tutoring for a Soul Ring. Honestly, that's one of my favorite plays.
Also,
I might have to pick that up.
one other kind of way to downgrade your deck, just a real fast. Take the free fast mana out. Get rid of Ancient Tomb. Get rid of Mana Crypt. Get rid of like Mana Vault.
Who owns these things?
I don't own a Mana Vault.
I think I only have one. I think it's the Crypt.
I need it to keep up, and this is the other thing. Like I have that fast mana in there, but I got to start making rocks with Togo like turn 1. So if I get a Jeweled Lotus, I get to play Togo for free. Yeah, I get to play Togo for free and net a rock turn 1. I'm doing it. I got to keep up.
So,
well, that's fair.
So with all of that,
I do want to recap one big thing, and we can move into the outro. But yes, if you guys take away one thing from this episode, let it be this: please always have a discussion with your play group. Always talk about what your expectations are of the game. I know it sounds silly, and you might think you're all on the same page, but I assure you, you're probably not. So just have those conversations. We need to talk more so that these games, like Magic's fun. I want everyone to have fun. You know, it doesn't mean you have to build a group hug deck. It just means know what you guys are expecting for the game. That's all.
Yeah. And remember, community is everything with this game. We need to play more as a community. We need to bring these communities together. And if downgrading a deck or building something silly is going to help do that, do it.
CDH people are people too.
And
I advocate for you.
And with that said, please make sure that you check us out on any. Well, if you're listening to us, you can find us on any major podcast. If you're seeing us, we are on YouTube at Into the 99, and it as well all of our socials, Into the 99 or Into the 99 podcast. That's Facebook, Twitter, YouTube. If you would like to, and on Reddit, where you can interact with some gnarly cards himself, Mr. Benson. He runs our Reddit account.
Goat caressing.
Yes.
PC, soft goat caressing.
And as well as if you would like to support us, if you're wondering, hey, does Into the 99 have any really cool swag? Yes. The answer is yes, we do. We have our own merch store. You can find the link in the description below or on our website.
Just go into the 99. Wear it.
As well as if you want to support us more, we do have our Patreon. We have some introductory tiers on there right now.
The basic land stack for Dan tier.
Yes, exactly. We are going to be upgrading that here shortly. We're going through our finalization of some new tiers, some new goodies, and everything like that.
It's very exciting
stuff.
Yeah, Brian. All shout outs to Brian. He's been doing a very, very good job at refining this. And Ryan, don't get me wrong, you've been helping equally. But you guys have been doing a very good job of like refining this and really, really putting the community first. So
yeah, what does the community want? What do you guys want? What's the best bang for your buck that we ourselves are able to give you? That's what I'm keeping in my mind for you guys. And
also, if you guys are listening to us on Apple, please leave us a like, a review, hopefully a good one. It really helps other people find us, and so we can do more of this for you guys.
And hey, you want your one-stop shop to everything Into the 99? check out into the99.com, where you can have links to our socials, like everything. It is a one-stop shop. Yeah. Oh yeah. I guess I should say that also into the99.com. We have a wonderful writing staff of community writers. Go there, show your support, check it out. Some really good tips. Actually, I'm really enjoying the best of 2020 list that Dante and I think Hayden has come up with some too.
Look, I read a lot of different Commander articles. I really do. But I'm going to say, bar none, our writers are the best.
Absolutely.
And with that, have a good day, guys.
See ya.